One of the biggest turning points of the Second World War was the Normandy landings. D-Day is seen today as a heroic storming of the beaches to try and liberate France from occupation, and for the Allies to gain a foothold in Europe against the German army. Previously, the British Expeditionary Force had been pushed back to Dunkirk, and the famous evacuation from the beachhead took place. My own grandfather was there on D-Day, dropping soldiers off on Juno Beach in a landing craft, but a French town nearby would come under intense and heavy fighting, as the Allies fought to liberate it from the Germans. The battle for Caen resulted in a Nazi-German defeat, and much of the city was destroyed by bombing raids and fighting, as every street became important for each side. There were many civilian casualties too. However, there was a series of executions carried out shockingly by the Germans of a number of prisoners. Join us today as we look at the brutal execution of the D-Day prisoners of Caen, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Before D-Day and the Normandy landings, the French resistance had been carrying out many acts of sabotage around Caen and other French towns. During the night of the 30th of April 1944, for example, they managed to derail a German train, and this caused chaos with the infrastructure around the town. The Germans were furious and outraged by the acts of sabotage, and they set the Gestapo and local agents to work, finding out who was responsible. The Gestapo in the area also sought to round up communists and imprison them, and many local men found themselves imprisoned. But on the night of the 5th of June 1944, the Allied bombardment began of Caen. The inmates inside the prison prayed for a bomb to smash into the prison to create an escape route for them. The prison was hit in one area, and 42 resistance members were killed and buried by the rubble. But the Germans were worried that Caen could be surrounded following the Normandy invasions, and because of this they had to make a decision about what would happen to their prisoners. The Soviets also feared prisoners falling into the hands of the enemy, as did the Germans, who were worried that the true horrors of their treatment would be told to the world. Hitler and Himmler would later issue orders not to let one single prisoner fall into the hands of the enemy. The plan for the Germans was to withdraw the Gestapo and the French collaborators, who helped them find members of the resistance to the south. They were going to initially move political prisoners to Allied, which had a big prison, and it was the Gestapo who made the decision that the prison population would be liquidated and the inmates would be slaughtered. Their fate was not known to their friends and family, and many were slaughtered and their stories would never be told. The prisoners who were regular prisoners such as thieves did not pose much of a threat, and because of this they were left behind. The political prisoners of Caen did not have trials, and many had been tortured brutally. One prisoner who survived said he came close to being shot, but it was decided that he had not been sufficiently interrogated. However, the Gestapo even broke his leg. As the Allies pushed forward into Normandy, it was clear that moving the prisoners to Allied would not have been possible, and Caen remained under heavy Allied bombardment. As this happened at the prison, the SD men and the Gestapo began to burn evidence of torture and mistreatment. The conditions of the prison were written down by some of the prisoners who survived. It was said of one cell that the room was a large, stone, dirty, whitewashed affair, with 3 wooden tables and forms. The prisoners could, if they wished, walk into the courtyard adjoining the room. There was one lavatory and a long galvanised bin for washing. The cubicles and bed frame were full of bugs which were, indeed, as hungry as ourselves. Sleep was practically impossible, and many of the prisoners were covered from head to foot with lumps caused by bites. The food was terrible, consisting mainly of cabbage soup, with about 3/4 pound of bread each day. For those who had money in the canteen fund, there were dishes of cabbage and sour milk for sale. Many of the inmates suffered from a mild form of dysentery, probably caused by too much cabbage water. It was also said that we were 19 men in one room of approximately 16 by 12 in that prison. The food consisted of 359 grams of black bread daily, and one small tin of watery cabbage at midday. No other food was available. The facilities for toilets consisted of a wooden tub in the corner of the room. This was emptied by ourselves once each Saturday. Many times this receptacle was brimming over days before it was due for emptying. The washing facilities were also non-existent, very little water, no soap and no towel of any description for drying. I remember early spring of 1942 when the British bombers visited the town, and the Germans nailed all the windows of our rooms from the outside so we could not peek out. In Caen, like the others, I was ill-treated by the Nazis and suffered malnutrition and starvation. Medical attention was obtained from a French doctor, but only if you could pay for it. The conditions in the cells were degrading, a tin bucket being the only communal means of sanitation. We were locked up in our cells for as long as 23.5 hours a day, practically every day. I learned that whilst at Caen, the Germans had designated me as a hostage, along with 7 others, so that the people of Guernsey given any great trouble to the Germans, I could have been taken out and shot, as were some people of other nationalities. As the bombs rained around the town, the decision was made to liquidate the political prisoners in Caen. The German commander in the town, Harold Hens, stated that this order came from his superior in Rouen, and a list of those to be executed was made. A wave of bombers hit close by the prison at 1 p.m, and following this pits were then dug for the bodies. The prisoners would be executed by firing squad, and it was the prison guards who made up the firing squad, and they were overseen by 3 men from the SD, who wore civilian clothes. It was said it was Russian prison guards who were given the task, and they had agreed to turn over to the Nazis. The prisoners were then forced into a courtyard, which was protected by high walls in which no one could see in. In the distance they could probably hear the fighting that was happening, as the Allies were locked into battle with the Germans. In groups of 5 and 6 they were pushed through a door into a smaller courtyard. Those men who were grouped together were on the list. It was said that using machine guns the guards mowed down the groups of the prisoners, and that they were not shot by single rifle shots. Some died quickly, but others did not, and they were left. Then that evening other guards went around with their weapons, and shot those who were not dead in the head with a coup de grace. It's not known how many prisoners were executed in the Caen prison massacre. It's estimated that 87 people were slaughtered, and it could have been over 100. Around 70 names were confirmed of prisoners who died inside there, and it's believed the number were resistors from different French towns, and many of the victims were also Allied Airmen who had been captured. The youngest victim was Colbert Marie, who was just 17, and the oldest victim was 66. All the records of the prison were destroyed and personal artefacts from the bodies were removed, and the bodies were not found. It's believed that the dead were first buried within the prison, and they were then dug up and were loaded into trucks, and the bodies were then burned inside of a wood 20 kilometres from the town. Following the liberation of Caen in July 1944, the execution of prisoners became known. Posters of those prisoners who were missing were put up by the families of the victims, but then their true story was uncovered. After the liberation, a bloody handkerchief, written by a tortured victim in his blood, outlined the evils of the prison. So on D-Day, as the intense fighting around the Normandy beachheads was erupting, inside of a prison nearby, many people were being slaughtered by the Nazis and the Gestapo. Today, many of the victims of the Caen prison massacre lie still in the ground in an unknown location, and their stories remain untold. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.